And good morning, everyone. I'm Bill Ritter. Welcome to Up Close. More than 600,000 Americans were killed by COVID, tens of millions of Americans infected. While we now know we have an effective vaccine out there, and yes, too many people are still not inoculated, the hard truth is there's a lot we don't know about this virus still. Like, where did it come from? Could we have stopped it? And how fast did it spread? And if we had detected and taken action earlier, what would have been the outcome? Why did our leaders downplay how serious this really was? There's now a big drive to start a commission to investigate those questions and issues, hoping to prevent future pandemics. Calling for action, U.S. Senator Bob Menendez from New Jersey, and he's our first guest on Up Close. Welcome once again, Senator, to Up Close.
Good to be with you, Bill.
Before we get into your call for a commission for COVID, I'd like to get your reaction to news this last week on Thursday that there's been this sort of bipartisan attempt by Republican senators and, of course, you and your colleagues on the Democratic side to deal with this infrastructure bill, $1.2 trillion proposed by President. We don't know all the specifics yet, but it does seem to be a big breakthrough here.
Well, yeah, President Biden's proposal was far more significant, but it seems like it is a good faith effort to try to find some common ground on something that should be as bipartisan as can be. We are living off the greatest generation's investment in infrastructure that at one time made us the envy of the world, that made us compete with the world, but we have done nothing since that great generation to make the type of further investments and enhancements that we should. So this is critical, and we think of infrastructure also more broadly. So I don't have all of the specifics yet, but I will say that I think it's a good step forward. I'll be looking at what the transit side of that picture is, because it's certainly important to us in our region, as well as whether it's as broad as how we define infrastructure now, which includes, for example, broadband, which we saw so important as children were being educated in their homes.
Two big aspects here. First, there is the creation of jobs, which is uber important right now. There's no question about that. We need to get new jobs for people who are out of work right now. And second, it does affect New Jersey and New York. And we talk about transportation, not just the existing transportation, but there's calls for how many decades for a new tunnel under the Hudson River to connect the two states.
Well, yes, absolutely. The Gateway project, which is 2 new Trans-Hudson tunnels, finishing the Portal Bridge, which is the lifeline in the Northeast Corridor that we finally got federal commitment for. And the good news is that we have an administration in Washington that fully embraces the Gateway program and the 2 new Trans-Hudson tunnels. Yep. And I am convinced that we will get the full funding agreement from the federal government, joined by the states of New York, New Jersey, and the Port Authority's shares to make this a reality. We generate 20% of GDP for the entire nation from the region. This is a project of national significance. I'm glad to see the Biden administration recognizes it as such.
Yes, this area does help steer the economic engine and vehicle, no question. Let's move on to COVID. You're pushing for a commission to investigate what we did wrong, what we did right, how we don't have this happen again. Is it that, or some people would say, well, there's some political overtones here. How do you respond to that part of it, and what do you want to get out of this commission?
Well, Bill, our National Coronavirus Commission Act, which is styled after the 9/11 Commission, is bipartisan. Senator Susan Collins of Maine, a Republican, and it is bicameral. In the House of Representatives, a Republican and a Democrat are also leading the effort there. It will span more than one administration. It will span the last one. It will span this one and how it responded to it once it came to office. And if the commission finds that there were failures going back in time in terms of our supply chain or other elements of a warning system or our participation in global health programs, it can go back further. We owe it to the 600,000 fellow Americans who we lost. We owe it to the survivors of those 600,000. And we owe it to every American to make sure that we understand what went right, what went wrong. Why do we have bidding wars among states for, personal protective gear? Why did we not have a better early warning sign? Where were the origins of COVID-19 so we can understand how we deal with a similar challenge in the future? Because we will have one. We had the H1N1 flu, we had Ebola. So there's only a question of time. And I don't want to see a repeat of history. I don't believe that 600,000 people had to die. We have to know what we did right, what we did wrong, correct it, get our supply chains in order, get our medical personnel in order, get our public health systems, which we have largely neglected, in order, so that we will never face such a circumstance again. So it's more than one administration, and it's being led by bipartisan members in both the House and the Senate.
I just want to get this right on the record, Senator. This is an intellectually honest endeavor and research project. Is that what you're saying? Because I think Americans at this point do not want, let's go after Trump, and let's go out, and the Republicans say, well, let's go after, Biden, whatever it is. We don't want politics involved in this. There is a real intellectually honest desire, is what you're saying, I hope anyway, that we want to find out the truth, no matter where it falls.
Absolutely. We want to find out the truth, no matter where it leads us. Look, the bottom line is that we even structured the commission evenly divided among Republicans and Democrats, calling for a independent chair, calling for that among the appointees to be made, one person has to be someone who is renowned in the health field. One person has to be of economic background, so we deal with the economic consequences. Each side has to appoint a former governor. So we have tried to structure this in a way that shows that it is truly a search for the truth. I've
got a million topics to talk to you about. I'd like to get to them. A quick answer to this, if you would. I want to get your take on the fact that, yes, we're almost at 70% of the country, almost, getting close anyway, to getting vaccinated, certainly in the tri-state area. But there's still 30% at least that are not inoculated. How worried are you about that?
Well, we have to do everything we can. We're now in what I would call a ground game. We had the big vaccination sites. Those who were willing and able came. And now we have to actually go and proselytize people. We have to use churches. We have to use community groups. We have to use influencers, all to achieve the goal. Because the one way we put this behind us is getting us all vaccinated.
Okay, let's talk about immigration. We have the Vice President of the United States about to go to the border and take a look, finally, for the first time by her administration and the Biden administration, at what's going on there. We've got all sorts of stories. You know the story, Senator, of the chaos at the border, people wanting to get in and not being able to, or getting turned around, people trying to get in illegally by those opportunistic coyotes that bring people for a lot of money. What's the status? Are we finally going to be able to do something about immigration, real immigration reform here?
Well, we have been having a series of bipartisan meetings on immigration. About 5 or 6 Republicans have joined over 10 Democrats in these meetings. We're trying to come to see what can be the common ground. I know the administration is committed to comprehensive immigration reform. I am the sponsor of that legislation. In the interim, we have to deal with the root causes. Even when President Trump was building his wall, there were people at the border trying to get in. So we have to deal with the root causes of what drives people here as part of the equation. So I hope we will be able to achieve that. Otherwise, we will have a perennial problem.
All right, let's talk about foreign relations again, but overseas this time. Well, what did you make of the president's trip? He got blasted, of course, by the commentators on Fox News for selling out the country and selling out to Russian President Putin. What was your take on the summits in Europe and then also the meeting with Mr. Putin?
Well, I got to tell you something. Somebody doing foreign policy for 30 years between the House and the Senate and chairs the Foreign Relations Committee. I thought the president had an excellent trip. He brought the G7 countries together in common cause. He got NATO to designate China as one of the critical challenges that we have. First time NATO's ever done that. And then he went to meet Putin. And it's really rich to hear, the right-wing commentators say they sold out to Putin. Where were they when President Trump was standing alongside of Putin, when Putin had interfered with our elections, when Putin had done a whole host of things to undermine our society and cyber attacks? And President Trump said he believed Putin and not the unanimous verdict of all of our intelligence agencies. I didn't hear them say that President Trump sold the nation out. So, I think, if anything, President Biden stood up to Putin. He told him, here's what's going to happen. He told them to cut it out. And I think there will be real consequences if Putin doesn't change course, and only time will tell.
Well, only time will tell. That's not, Mr. Trump used to say that as well, but it is true. Only time will tell. We will see. Let me talk to you about guns, because this last week, President cracking down on gun control and saying, he's going to hold dealers responsible for not following the law of background checks, and he wants, once again, to ban assault weapons. Where are we with gun control and gun control reform?
Well, legislatively, it takes two to tango. There's strong support among Democrats for reasonable gun safety measures, universal background checks. You can't drive a car unless you have a license, and that's universal. Why not be able to ensure that there's a universal background check to get a gun? Why do we need high-capacity magazines? That's my legislation to ban them. High-capacity magazines is about high-capacity killing. And unless we have a strong federal role, then it doesn't matter that states like New York or New Jersey, which have some of the toughest gun laws in the nation, and enforces them, when 8 out of 10 guns that are involved in an incident in New Jersey come from out of state.
Yep.
So we need national perspective. I hope Republicans will join us, but I'm afraid that even when Senator Toomey joined Senator Manchin a couple of years ago on a background check bill, only 3 other Republicans joined him, and 2 of them are no longer in the Senate.
And of course, scores and scores and scores of mass shootings so far this year. The economy can't return to normal unless crime is down and gun insanity stops. U.S. Senator Bob Menendez from New Jersey, thank you for joining us once again on Up Close. Good luck to you, sir.
Always great to be with you.
All right.